Good evening. One thing I want to tell you guys from the start is with all of the COVID stuff, we have so missed being in communities. It's very difficult for an extrovert to sit at home and work behind a computer and show the love that we want to show to the community, so I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. And I want to tell you, too, you have done an outstanding job of making us feel safe while we've been here, too. So you'll notice as we work through this, we're going to mask up and we're not speaking. I am just for the front row, so you know as soon as we're done, I'm going to scooch up here, so I'll be walking by. I'll mask up first as we kind of switch out. So as Ken said, Main Street is a way of life. It's a way to manage the changes in your district over time. So it's not meant to be a 3-year program or a 5-year program. It's really meant to help you manage things as your district changes. I was a local Main Street director myself. The community where I was a director is now in their 27th year. And the things that you're doing in that community now, I never dreamed of in the 10 years that I was there. So that's where I feel that you guys are at, ready to move to that next level. So I'm going to have each team member introduce themselves as we go up. As Ken said, I'm Mary Helmer. I'm the state coordinator for Main Street, Alabama. Been here a little over 7 years, working in the state of Alabama and loving every minute of it. Trisha Black is our field services specialist. She'll talk more about herself. And we've got Courtney Bennett with Montevallo Main Street, Jay Schlinsog, I gotta look and see where you guys are at, with Downtown Professionals Network, and then Randy Wilson with Community Design Solutions. They are the A team, guys. We brought the A team. They're so good, and I think you're gonna be very pleased with the recommendations that we have for you tonight. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about organization and a little bit about an intro to Main Street, because one of the things that we discovered while we were here was not everybody knew what we did. Not everybody knew what Opelika Main Street did. Not everybody knew what the other organizations did. So the very first thing you need to do is get together, and all of you do your little elevator speech. I know that's old school, but it still works. So everybody knows what everybody else does, because you need to work together seamlessly. So when you think about Main Street, you need to think about what happened to Main Street from the beginning. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background. The National Main Street Center has been around for over 40 years now. It was founded within the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And it was because of basically kind of the federal highway system. If you think about it, before that, those of you who are my age and older, I remember living in a town of about 4,000. I have 11 brothers and sisters. We all went shopping in the town that we lived in. I'm sure the merchants with equal fear and delight when my mom drug us all in for school supplies. So, I'm sure, because we all went at the same time. It was so much fun. You just shopped where you lived. You didn't go outside of that. Federal highway system comes in. It changes where we're at. Suddenly you can get other places quickly. You had big cars were big, gas was cheap, and it changed everything. Then you throw the advent of the mall on top of that. Another thing that we experience in the United States is a blessing of a lot of land. The sad part of that particular blessing is sprawl, the opportunity to say, well, there's always more land that we can do more things on. Any of you who've been blessed enough to travel to Europe and some other places, you see how compact their downtowns are, and they don't have to have all of this crazy 4 and 5 lane streets, because the cars and the pedestrians live cohesively together because they have the space. So that happened too. And then the internet happened. And you could suddenly shop at 3 o'clock in the morning in your fuzzy pink pajamas if you wanted to. So downtowns were no longer the primary provider of goods and services within the community. But is there hope? Of course there's hope. What I love about what's happened in the last couple of years is you've seen the pendulum start to swing back to downtowns and to independent retailers and business owners. People want to feel valued. They want to know who they're talking to. I'm looking at the masks here, and that was so cool, and thank you for those, and what you're doing. I can order a mask online, but I didn't get that. So that's the piece that people want. They want that personal side of things. The trends do support downtown. People are tired of the impersonality of just shopping malls. Shopping malls are dying at the rate of 500 a year. And what they're building in their place is lifestyle centers. And basically they're fake downtowns. You guys got the real thing. So let's celebrate the real thing of what you have. The personal service, you just can't get anywhere else than what we've actually seen in the downtown district over the last couple of days. The good news is the highway goes both ways, and so does the internet. So take advantage of that. So some of the things you're going to hear tonight are how we can draw visitors back into your district, and we can also draw those shoppers back into the district. So where is your downtown headed? You need to think about expanding that business mix. I desperately want to be able to provide to you guys, and you desperately need an updated market analysis. The last one you had was in 2014, which we provided to you. It's time for a new one. Unfortunately, Jay may touch on this a little bit, we have this little thing called the census coming up. Everybody fill out the census, please. And once we get all that census information back, we're going to have a lot better information. So it's, trying to decide when to do a market analysis right now is kind of tricky. Jay may talk a little bit more about that in theirs, but you desperately need that. So we know you need to understand that as well. It will always be a collaborative effort of both public and private sectors to make Main Street successful long term. It's never meant to be entirely public, and it's never meant to be entirely private. That cohesive mix is what makes Main Street successful over the long term. Those communities that see Main Street going into their 27th, 28th year, like where I came from, the city's support is stronger than it was 25 years ago because they see the value of what's happening within the district. And those traditional commercial districts require management. They require that time. Somebody who eats, sleeps, thinks, dreams, sometimes nightmares about what's happening within their district. And I'm looking at directors here, and I was one myself. There are nights that weren't so much fun. I still have those from time to time. But you're so proud of what you're able to do. And I was telling Courtney and Trisha and the crew when we were having dinner the other night how cool it is for me to be able to go back, because my sons still both live in the community where I was a director for so long, to be able to go back to that community and see the changes that happened while our team was there. And it's pretty cool. I'm still a little hippie in me. I just want to make things better. My mom's big thing was leave things better than you found them. I think she wanted us to clean our rooms. We took it farther. But I can go back to that community and I can see that they're better than when we found it. That's your goal every day, is to make your downtown Opelika better than how you find it currently. Most of your resources are going to be local. These are the facts of life about downtown revitalization. A lot of times they're looking for grants and money from the outside or somebody with a magic wand to make everything better. There isn't. All of the work generally is going to come from the people within the district. So you have to forge those coalitions. You have to have those strong partnerships with your chamber, with your economic development, with your city. All of those partners need to be involved, and that communication has to be very strong. So those things are super important. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the funding of what happens within a Main Street program over time. So you can kind of see where the public is at, funding from the businesses in the district, I can talk, community funding, and then that miscellaneous. We're all finding we can't do a lot of big events now. Nobody wants to, well, we may want to, but we can't. In a group of 8,000 or 9,000 people just having a good time, we have to be careful. Those were a lot of the funds that helped fund the Main Street program. We're having to find different ways to do things, so we really need to look at that balanced funding source. So when you look at the Main Street four-point approach, organization is really getting everybody singing out of the same songbook. Finding volunteers, finding funding, having a board put together, all of that fun organizational basic stuff that is so important foundationally to everything else that happens. Design is about how the district looks. How is it visually? And we get caught up sometimes in design on buildings and historic preservation, which I'm a big believer in, but design is so much more than that. And wait till you see what Randy's going to talk about tonight. It's much broader scope than just architecture. Economic vitality is that piece that's kind of hard to wrap your arms around sometimes, but it's that understanding how to work with existing businesses, help them to be more profitable, and figuring out how you're going to fill those market gaps. And the last of the 4 points is promotion. And frankly, that's the one that's been turned upside down over this last several months, because in Alabama, we're very accustomed to having lovely weather, even though it's really hot today, but we have great weather most of the time. You can do a lot of stuff outside and have large gatherings. Can't do it now. So we have to figure, what are we doing beyond special events? So promotion is also about ringing the cash register, about changing negative perceptions of a district, and making sure that we have time to get tourists and other people more comfortable back into your district. So the organization committee plays that key role, that continued community engagement. I've been talking to a whole bunch of people over this last couple of days saying, please don't become disconnected when we leave. Don't do that. Stay involved, push, be involved, ask for communication, ask to be a part of what's going on. You have to have good governing documents, volunteer management, public relations, partnerships, and fundraising. Now, as we said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to get a written report, come back in about 6 weeks' time. I'm going to have a whole lot more in that. As fun as I think organization is, I made mine really short because the really cool stuff is coming. But I do want to make a plug for organization. You can't do their fun stuff without having a good, solid organization. And last but not least, I wanted to talk a little bit about the survey. We were blown away by the number of people who showed up the other night. That was great. And again, everybody had their masks on. You guys are so good. I was so proud. But we also had a lot of people come online and do it. So we ended up with 75 completed surveys. Courtney put all of that together. She types 1,000 times faster than I do. So we will give you the entire list. The people who answered online tended to be more verbose and more time to type in. So we have some rather lengthy answers that are worth the read. You need to take some time to look at it. You will get that full piece when you get your written report. But Courtney, bless her heart, got to look through 75 of these and figure out what were the ones that got mentioned the most often. So we talked about considering downtown Opelika today, the top strengths and assets were plenty of parking. And somebody's going to mention parking today because we always talk about parking whenever we talk about Main Street. But frankly, you do have plenty of parking. I've been here for 3 days. I've never had a problem finding a place to park. So we need to think about how you manage the parking. But that's for Jay or Randy. One of them is taking that on. The bars and restaurants. Boy, we had fun eating in your restaurants, getting to know people. Your food is amazing. The service is wonderful. So that is a huge asset for you guys. And it is a walkable downtown. Now, I would like to put in, for the city, to put in some misters or a fan or paper fan, something. It's a little hot. But if you could make it just a little bit more comfortable, a little more shade, but you have a very walkable downtown. The biggest weaknesses and problems, a lack of diversity and not welcoming to everyone, which I found interesting, but it was said over and over and over again. So that is something we're going to need to think about and work on. Downtown is not accessible for all users, so I do know you're working on that currently with the handicap accessibility. Empty buildings, consolidated building ownership, you do have some empty buildings here. Inconsistent business hours, closing too early, which I completely understand in a COVID environment, but as we're trying to open back up and people are trying to come back into your district, that consistency is key. And we need more residential downtown, but you're going to hear housing, and maybe more housing as Randy gets up to do his talk. And then we talked a little bit about considering what downtown Opelika to be in 5 years, what changes need to take place. So the first one was what goods and services. So this is you're getting everything cooking, you're getting on track. This is what you're going to be seeing in 5 years. More diverse, independent, small retail and restaurants. I'm so pleased to see that. To see the people value the small, quirky, unusual businesses that you already have and that you need more of those. A market or grocery. If you're going to have housing and increase your density and living downtown, you're going to have a market of some sort. My office is in Birmingham, Alabama. When I'm in Birmingham, I actually live in Madison. It's very confusing. But when I'm in Birmingham, I rent a room from a friend of mine at the Pizzitz. Downtown Birmingham, when we get past this COVID and protests and all those stuff, is changing dramatically. Dramatically because we now have a Publix in the downtown. So from the Pizzitz, I can walk 1 block, 2 blocks, go to get my groceries and walk back. In fact, it's easier to walk it than to get your car out and pull in and do all that kind of stuff. You got to have that support. If people will live downtown, you got to have that food downtown. And food halls. The food hall is, if you've not been to the Pizzitz food hall, put in the plug for that. It's awesome. So you're going to have that. And then art-related businesses, art and music-related businesses. This town does feel, your downtown does feel like that quirky, fun, I want to go hang out and find something different every day. You already have a lot of that going on. You want more. And then what attractions and activities will there be downtown? More live music, more opportunities to exercise. Courtney and I turned the wrong way when we came out of the building that we worked in this afternoon, so we got more exercise than we wanted. We went downhill and went, oh crap, the car's the other way, directionally challenged on a good day. So we walked all the way up the hill. You can exercise here. More community events that appeal to diverse audiences. Trails, accessible connectors into the downtown. You have to have that. They cannot be playing Frogger coming across whatever that street is. Tell me.
2nd Avenue.
Thank you, 2nd Avenue. If you've got, you got the beautiful bed and breakfast over there, if I was staying there and I just wanted to walk into the district, I'd think twice before I looked at that. So figuring out that connectivity is huge in all the corridors. A farmer's market and then more public art. So those are the things that people are yearning for, but there's a whole lot more in that survey that's going to be a part. But thank Courtney for doing the big work on that, because that was, she did all of that, pulled that all together. So I am done with my particular part. I'm going to turn it over to Trisha. Let me do this.
My spray for a minute.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
I'll sanitize afterwards. Hey, I'm Trisha Black, and I've been with Main Street Alabama for 4.5 years, but I was with Athens and their Main Street program for 8 years. And I have been involved with Opelika in the Main Street program before we had a state program. So I worked with the directors that had been here in the past, and we didn't have a state program to turn to for resources. So we were just trying to figure it out, going to trainings and sharing rooms together. But one of the things that I realized when we were taking on new designated communities, that they were getting this resource report, and I thought, wow, this would have been really great to have. Through all those times when we were kind of floundering around. And so I'm really glad that this is a service that Main Street Alabama is able to do to those communities that were grandfathered in, like Opelika and Athens, into the Main Street program. So I'm going to be focusing on promotion. And first I wanted to show this picture and see, don't you miss that? Isn't that weird? That's probably a little older picture from Wine on the Tracks. And this is my first outing. This is the first time I've been outside of Athens since the first week of March. So it is a little daunting to be around a lot of people suddenly. But we're going to get back to this point. And in my written report, we will talk about some of the events that we might want to consider that will reach those audiences that people feel like is lacking, whether it's bringing in a more diverse group or being more family friendly. But first, let's talk about what we can do right now. And some things that the promotion committee can be talking about and discussing is to really look at the current events that you had pre-COVID, and not just the Main Street events. Let's look at every event that's happening downtown, and let's mark out what audience that event is marketing to, and let's see where the gaps are. It's also a good time to reach out to your merchants and find out what worked for them. What are some of their suggestions? Did it actually ring the register? So this is just a really good time to look at what you've done pre-COVID and then make some decisions on what you might want to do going forward. I also encourage you to look at your social media analytics. I know I'm looking at those for Main Street Alabama, and the time that people are on social media is vastly different now than it was pre-COVID. So look at that and see who your market is, who is looking at your social media and the times of day, so you can schedule out your posts accordingly. I'm going to go in a little more detail about how to market safe experiences to boost your consumer confidence in the district. The promotion committee can also encourage people to go and do online reviews and talk about the experiences that they're having in the district, so Facebook reviews, Google reviews. And then I want to talk a little bit about creating a destination brand, and then I'm going to introduce some safe and or virtual events that you might consider doing right now. So currently, this is your city logo, which I really like. And then this is the organization logo for the Opelika Main Street program. I really want you to think about looking at how you can modify this to reflect the downtown, because you really want those logos to play really nice together. And I'm going to show you some examples of what I mean. This is the branding from Athens, and this is the community brand. And then this is the brand for the downtown district. Everyone there refers to it as the square. So that is what you see, but you can see how that plays really nicely together. This is Anniston's downtown image. And then they actually, Main Street Alabama proposed and look at different districts. And you can see how those districts play really well with that downtown image. And again, if it plays well with the city, it just shows a very nice continuous message with your branding. This is an example of how you can take that branding into your advertising. The great thing about having this downtown brand is you can have different businesses, events, attractions that you're featuring in the photo. But the messaging that you're continually putting out is this is in our downtown. This is in our downtown. So this is from downtown Wetumpka, and this is just showing. I believe they ended up with "We love this place." Isn't that right with their tagline? Playing off the "we" of Wetumpka, and you can see how it says "We are unique shops, we are bold color flavors, and we love the outdoors." The next thing that I wanted to talk about was building that consumer confidence, and the businesses are doing really good down here right now as far as what they're doing to modify during this pandemic, as far as making people feel more comfortable. There's the dining outside of John Emerald. That's nice, so that people have that experience and to be able to sit outside and enjoy their beverage. I love this outside of Niffers with the grab this paper towel, to open the door. I had not seen that anywhere before. And then when we got our ticket, I was like, no, let me take a picture of that. Cover up your, credit card number. But that the pen came in a little plastic bag, and then you had a little towelette too. So, because I usually just use my own pen now. This was at Zazu. I've not had my temperature taken before, when I walked into a restaurant. So that was good. And then I moved a chair to sit at the end of the table, and I don't know where that waitress came from. She was there in no time. She's like, no, we got to maintain a certain distance. So that makes me feel better, especially, again, it's my first trip outside of Athens, and it made me feel a lot better about being in those establishments. Here's some other ways that the customer service was elevated during this time. I was talking to, I believe it's Lynn at TaylorMade, and she talked about how they started doing Facebook Lives, and it's been so successful that that's something they plan to do after post-COVID. And Griff Goods, the extra, I just say it's just being extra, but like the little card that you get with your mask, I mean, that's just top-notch quality. And the fact that for every mask that is purchased, then one is given away, just, y'all, that's great stuff. And then Southern Crossing, I love the video that she did where she talks about, hey, if you need to get something from our store, this is all the ways you can get it. This is the way our website is working right now. I mean, that's good stuff. When you are looking at your downtown businesses, I don't want to go to that yet. A small business can cater to your customer unlike your big box stores can. And I think that's something that you really need to celebrate. And again, during this time, you really want to put it out there anywhere that you can, okay, that we're going the extra mile to make you feel comfortable, because I can guarantee you're not going to get that in a lot of other places. For example, and when my son, he tended to all of a sudden grow out of his clothes, and I was out of town and he needed a pair of khaki pants and a button-down shirt. And I sent him down to a business in downtown Athens, and they got him fixed up. I said, hey, you can pay for it later or send us your debit card. They knew what my budget was, and he was taken care of. And I couldn't have sent him to Belk, and that happened. So, again, celebrate that. And one of the ways you can do is do some messaging where you're highlighting the things that are happening. Okay, now, I know this is kind of quirky. I really tried to come up with something better, but it's like safe Opelika, like, oh, we like you. Okay, I know that's really quirky, but I'm sure y'all could come up with something a lot more creative. But this can be in your storefront windows. This can be on your social media. And again, you're just continuously pushing that message out. And then if you have that destination brand, then you can have it down, at the bottom of these images. Maybe I'll come up with something better by the time the written report comes around. And then now, that was what the businesses, they're doing really good here, and what a lot of other businesses in other communities are doing, a lot of those same things. But I wanted to touch on what Main Street programs can do in response to COVID-19, and I wanted Courtney to have a chance to talk about what they've done in Montevallo.
Yes. Well, hey everyone, like she said, my name is Courtney. I currently serve as the Executive Director of Montevallo Main Street, and we received a branding package from Main Street, Alabama, our destination brand, and I've been utilizing that in my messaging regarding shopping local safely during the time of COVID. Specifically, I know masks have been a very controversial topic in my community, and again, y'all have been doing a great job responding here. But I wanted to celebrate the employees and the business owners who are doing a good job wearing masks. So using my brand font, I have been scheduling posts to promote different people using their brand colors as well. So this is Happy's Variety Store on Main Street in Montevallo, and her colors are green. So I just wanted to thank her for shopping local safely. And again, I feature several businesses in this image, and just saying we all need to do our part to slow the spread of COVID-19 and using that positive message. So even though we have some folks who are not interested in doing that, just celebrating the positive peer pressure.
That was the only slide I had for you, but you can say whatever else you want to say.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Is that good?
That's good. Yes.
One of the things I wanted to read what it says here underneath this one image. It says physical distancing plus mask if you'll be within 6 feet of others plus clean hands. This was messaging that they did before the governor's order was updated. So this was a way to kind of put that pressure and celebrate that this is a good thing to do in the district. This is what the Foley Main Street program has been doing to help their business. They put together on their website a list of resources, so you can go in and it's small business loan information, any kind of those resources are in one place. But the other thing they did is they added get your business online, because they knew these business owners are trying to, as the word of the moment is, pivot and try to adapt and get online. They're having a hard time figuring out which platform to use or what is the best way to do that. But when you go to this link, it's got everything on there. It's got Shopify. It's got how you can use Facebook. It's just got all the different platforms and an easy list that you can read and cut out all that work for those businesses. This is a package that was put together, and Jay will talk a little bit more about Reopen Main Street. That was it's a project of his. It's a great website, so reopenmainstreet.com. And it's got resources on how community leaders can adapt to this time, as well as businesses and Main Street programs. We have a graphic package that can be used. The Safe and Sound, the circle is actually floor graphics. And this is all going to be made available to Ken, or actually already has. And then you can see where some of our programs have used that Reopen Main Street image and adapted it to their program. This is Athens, and you see their Athens logo where they actually made it look like a lock, so it's unlocking. And then this is Jasper, where they kept the shopping bag image and then just put their branding in that. This is some more of that graphic package that I mentioned. In the graphic package, where you see that says My Main Street, that is actually left blank. So a Main Street program can actually put their logo in there. And then this is a nice collateral piece that you could share on social media, or actually have a paper piece that you could have it at your restaurants and retail, where people could share what their favorite eats, the shops, their favorite sips, and favorite events. So Rethinking Events. Again, I heard from people that they wanted more family-friendly events, and these are some of the events that our programs have done the last couple months. Heflin Main Street is actually having their drive-in movie night tonight, and if you pre-purchase your tickets, then you get a cupcake from a bakery there in their downtown. And they have the FM transmitter. I believe the fire department has that, so that's how they're able to stream that into everyone's cars. But they also did that in South Huntsville, and in South Huntsville they did that in a parking lot, and then had food trucks and vendors available there during that time. Consider doing some virtual experiences with live music. This is something that my husband and I have done on our date nights on our front porch. And this is a guy out of South Carolina, and he has his Venmo and all his other platforms that you can throw him a tip. And it's great because he interacts the whole time, like, oh, hey, Trisha, hey, Shane, Shane drinking old fashioned, how y'all doing? But then we start asking for certain songs, and we throw him a tip. And so just like you would at a regular bar. But that interaction is the key piece on making that successful. Consider doing some things in the district that you can get people activated and moving around in your district. The images on the left is from Covington, Kentucky, where they took the material, like sign material, the metal signs, and they had a historic photo printed on the sign, and then they posted on the exact angle as if you're looking at the current building. So just a great fun way to get people moving around and learning more about the history of your district. This is the images on the right is the Purple Cup Secret Art Walk, and that is in downtown Huntsville. And they have an entertainment district, and their cup's purple. And what they did, this is so easy. They just put together all the list of their public art, and they make you feel like it's a secret. And you can walk around and check off all the ones you find. Well, they created it. It's on their website. It's one and done. But it's just a fun activity again to get people moving in your district. And enjoying whatever it is that you want to highlight in the district. This was done in Birmingham beside Railroad Park, and I believe it was the month of May. Every weekend they closed a half-a-mile street down for pedestrian only, okay, or people riding a bicycle or whatever. And then they had programming on that street. So here's just some images where they have the sign says Family Box Expo. They had the little fire jugglers. They had chalk, where people could come and do the chalk. They had, dogs were out there. People were dancing, and they had socially distanced markings. But a great way to bring people out. So right now is a great time to see what it's like to close down a street and not have cars on that street. This is in Enterprise, and they have a big spring market, like a spring open house in their district. And what they decided to do was go ahead and host it, but make it all virtual. They did a really nice job of this. They started it. The mayor starts off, giving his little message, getting his popcorn ready. They went into different businesses. They would scroll on the bottom, whatever the special was, or maybe a little commercial or something at the bottom for whoever it was being spotlighted. But what was great is I watched it, and I sat there and I was like, oh my goodness, there's 20% off at Cam's Cotton. Well, I immediately, because I wanted to support this local business, did my comments. They invoiced me, and I got it, within a couple of days. But they also had the soap making company do a demo on how you do that. They had musicians that did live music. So they just really made it into a great event. And then if you had to tune out for a little bit, it was fine, because you could go back later in the day, or you could actually go and watch the video now. They said it was a lot of work, but the great thing about that is that they've done it. So they figured out what they would change, so you could reach out and talk to them and see how you could do it. We were in Red Clay last night. I love the mask. This was great. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if you said, okay, if someone could get the number of these masks right, you're going to get this business. You can go to this business and get $5 off their merchandise, or you get a free appetizer, or whatever it is. But I love the fact that you're taking this time to be funny, because we all need a little humor right now. Another thing that I had thought about that you might want to consider is right now people are buying RVs. Families feel safe, getting their family together and going down, to RV parks. But after a while, you got to get out of that thing. And I was watching this conversation online where this guy was like, hey, we wanted to go visit this downtown, but there was no place for us to park. They have a motorhome. And he said, we just wanted to pull off and eat downtown, walk around, stretch our legs. And they were told they had to, park a mile away. So they just didn't stop. So just think about how you can take advantage of this opportunity, whether it's just getting on some of these blogs, RV blogs, and saying, hey, you can park at, this church parking lot, or, give them those opportunities. And lastly, I did mention, we got to embrace humor. This was a post. This is not anything from Alabama. I believe it's from Garland, Texas. I don't know the number of shares. It's over 24,000 the last time that I looked at it. But at this time, and the reason why we have all those shares, because people just, we just gotta laugh a little bit right now. So again, just embrace the quirky and have a little humor during this time.
Good evening, everyone. Well, that's encouraging. My name's Jay. I'm with Downtown Professionals Network out of Franklin, Tennessee. Somehow, people here picked up very quickly on this tag that Mary threw out about being the numbers guy. I didn't tell you how many times as I was going in and out of businesses and up and down the street, oh, that's the numbers guy. So tonight, I'm just going to spend the next hour going through numbers with you. Yeah! Yay, right? No, I'm not going to do that to you. What I do want to talk about, though, and I do have a few numbers just to keep the geeks here happy as well, but what I want to talk about is economic development in the context of historic preservation. That is Main Street. As Mary mentioned earlier, sometimes that economic vitality component is the one that becomes a little bit mysterious. What does that look like? What does that really mean? Well, if you will, we have an economy that already exists, and it has evolved over the course of 100+ years right here in downtown Opelika. Sometimes I think it's much easier if you go out to the peanut field, scrape the ground, put up a building, usher in your industry, whatever it is. That's pretty easy. But in this existing economy that we have existing property owners, we have existing business owners. And that can be beautiful and it can get messy all at the same time as we talk about economic development. But what's really encouraging here, I've seen all kinds of signs that you get it. Like I say, this has evolved over 100 years or more. And the stories that we hear, the stories about the businesses, the places, the people that made this place, they truly are something to be celebrated. So even as we think about the future and what change could happen in the future, when it comes to economic development, it's really important that we hang on fast to these memories, these stories that make this place special. And I would go so far as to say that I'm guessing maybe one or two of you came here wanting to talk about recruitment and thinking about that next great business that we're going to bring. I will only suggest to you, no, I won't suggest, I want you all to hear this loudly at least a couple of times. The very best recruitment that we can do right now today is supporting those existing businesses that we have here, those property owners and those businesses that have already staked their claim in the district. And it's especially important right now as we consider the times that we're in. I'm always careful what terminology to use there because all these commercials are starting to sound the same. If ever there was a time. So the good news is that there are some really good building blocks to work with. Now I threw out just a few slices of information for you back on Tuesday. But consider when we think about this existing economy that we're working within, just within a 5-minute drive of where we're standing or sitting right now, businesses within that 5-minute drive time are generating over $311 million by the best estimates that we have today. Don't know about you, but in my neighborhood, those are big numbers. Granted, that 5-minute drive time extends a little bit beyond what we might consider to be the core downtown area. Nonetheless, these are big dollars. The other good news is that the market is there and the capacity is growing to help sustain not only our existing businesses, but perhaps entrepreneurs and others that might be joining the mix in the future. And I just share this with you. I updated this since we were together on Tuesday evening. And the good news here is when you look at those projections, the change anticipated from 2019 to 2024 over that 5-year period, you see that both in terms of population, households, and in terms of median household income, we're projecting growth across all those different drive time areas from the 5, the 10, to the 15-minute drive time area. And notice, in terms of median household income, where is the biggest jump expected to occur? It's right in that 5-minute drive time area, right in the core. This is very consistent with what we heard from the good folks at the city that we had a chance to meet with, Matt and the crew. And I have a feeling, a good feeling, that some of those projections may even be conservative. Mary mentioned earlier it's a difficult time for geeks like me because we're 10 years out from the last census. It's going to be another year and a half, 2 years before we start seeing the information from the 2020 census that's underway right now. But nonetheless, the projections look good, and what we're seeing, what we're feeling, what we're hearing out on the street make it look even better. So, as we think about moving ahead, really just want to talk in these three areas for a short time here this evening. And as I mentioned before, the very best thing that we can do right now, today, is support those businesses that have already staked their claim in not just their livelihood, but the future of the downtown district. So in the context, as we think about economic vitality, economic development, and some of the suggestions that I want to share with you here today, I'm going to frame them in terms of some more immediate kinds of ideas and suggestions for y'all to consider, but also think of them in terms of planting some seeds for some longer term initiatives and strategies that might be appropriate for downtown Opelika. This is where we start, and actually this is where I started back in late March. It was an article from Brookings that caught my attention in a big hurry because part of it included a study whereby they assigned a level of risk ranging from immediate to long-term to every different business category in the NAICS, the business code tree. And what caught my attention is you look at these assigned immediate risk, many of those types of businesses are the very businesses that populate downtown Opelika and downtowns across Alabama and beyond. And so that really was the start of that special project that Trisha referenced, Reopen Main Street, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. A little better news, though, Main Street, Alabama did do a follow-up survey, and what appears to have happened, I think this is about 3, maybe 4 weeks old at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, probably about a month.
So what we saw happening is that some of the initial doom and gloom predictions that were coming from Brookings and from all other think tanks across the country may have been a little bit aggressive because based on this study, it appeared that the staying power of businesses became stronger even during those initial reopening phases. So that gives us hope. The downside of that is that I believe, and I think I've talked with a number of folks that would agree even here, is that back in March or April, we were thinking that by May or June, certainly by July, this would all be behind us, right? And we'd be getting on with life as normal, or whatever normal looks like on the backside of this. But here we are, end of July now, and we anticipated even back in March or April when we were putting together the content for Reopen Main Street that there were going to be some starts and stops along the way. And so that only aggravates, if you will, some of the challenges that our businesses have as they are having to start and stop along the way. So a few things, a few ideas to share with you. Number one, maximize those public spaces. And there have been a good number of folks that work in this arena that have suggested that recovery will occur in the public realm, in these public spaces. And we see examples of that right here on the street in Opelika. And as a interesting note, there are some of these amenities, some of these new convenience-oriented assets that we have introduced during COVID that we believe could very well live beyond COVID. As a matter of fact, we're wrapping up a series of surveys in Iowa right now with more than 30 towns. And the number and percentage of folks across those 30 communities that would like to see curbside pickup continue even beyond COVID ranges in the 50 to 60+%, pretty consistently across all of those different communities. So it's going to be important that as we experiment during this time, and I want you to really seize on this opportunity to experiment, think about how we might take those lessons and apply them to the public realm and even inside our businesses as we move along. This is another great example of experimentation right outside the distillery. And some communities have even gone so far as to experiment with closed streets and slow streets. And there are going to be some valuable lessons to learn here. Randy mentioned, I think it was yesterday, that some of the things that we're trying right now that we've been given license to try right now are some of the very things that many of us have been talking about for a long time. Things like, yes, streets should accommodate cars, but the priority should be on pedestrians in a downtown environment. So this provides that opportunity to experiment in such a way. Second, I mentioned that, it started looking a little bit better, I think, before the rollback in a lot of our states that we're working right now, but these starts and stops are creating some real challenges for all of us and certainly for our businesses as well. So it's going to be important that we continue to promote those small business assistance programs and be working with our partners in the community to find resources and promote those resources that can give that helping hand along the way. Take, for example, Woodford State Bank, a small community bank in Monroe, Wisconsin, that put together a grant program that benefited 40 businesses in the downtown area. Or the Patronicity campaign in Saline, Michigan, that's helping to providing some help for a number of small businesses there. Or even the Fighting Chance Fund from St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, don't have time to go into details on these today. I'll be providing you with some links so that you can dig into those. And for those three, there are 300 more different ideas and programs out there. I'm going to provide you the link to the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Kennedy Smith, who was a former director of the National Main Street Center, has actually been doing an incredible job of not just compiling information on federal and state programs, but even programs at the local level. So you can go in there and you can see upwards of probably a couple hundred plus different ideas for programs that oftentimes are being created at the grassroots level, right at the local level. Ramp up your online presence. And congratulations for those of you that have taken this opportunity to do just that. And Trisha showed some examples of how it's not just e-commerce, but even using some of the social media platforms to help generate some additional revenue during this time. Take it, I guess, if you want, from fortune. Now's the time, because those that are doing this are going to come out on top on the other side. So if you're still struggling, if we have businesses that are still struggling with how to incorporate social media, how to incorporate e-commerce components, there is a library of videos, how-to videos, that you have access to. They were put together for Main Street, Alabama, and if you get together with Ken, he will provide you the link and the password to get into those different videos. And if you are online, make sure that you're letting folks know that you're online. I can't tell you how many businesses that I had a chance to visit and I was thankful, but I had to ask, so are you online too? So get out there, get in front of that, let folks know, give them all of the different ways that they can do business with you during this time. And play nice. Play nice. You think this is for play now, right? It's not for play. This is the P word. And I'm not going to go deep in the P word, but we heard enough about the P word. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Parking, yes, parking. We heard enough about it that we thought, we couldn't leave town without at least talking about parking, mentioning something about parking. And it goes back, if you will, even to some of the work that we were doing as part of that those reopening strategies. If we really want to make a sincere effort to welcome our customers, our clients back, it only makes sense that we're making the most convenient parking available for them. That should happen all the time, but it certainly needs to be happening now. Now, there were times when, and you even saw it up on the screen here, it wasn't just us, there were others that were saying, we have lots of parking, we have ample parking, and others are saying, no, 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 we do not. It's always a question of, so is the issue a matter of parking supply or parking management? Now, we've been here for all of 2.5, 3 days, so we're not experts on this, but I would suggest to you that the place to start is in terms of management, and begins with some of the folks that occupy the businesses right out here on the street. So back when, I mean, I'm surprised that this isn't even yellow up there. This comes out of the archives from when I was doing Ken's job years and years and years ago in St. Charles, Illinois. We were having the same issue. It was business owners, it was employees that were taking the prime spots out on the streets and in parking lots that should be available for our customers. So the thing is, I mean, we can talk about all kinds of different enforcement, all kinds of management systems, but really it begins with y'all. And I'm not saying that y'all are offenders, you're all the problem here, but you probably know someone who is. So it'd be okay if you just tapped them on the shoulder every now and then and said, hey, we're really needing to work together here more than we ever have to make this work for all of us. And maybe it's even something as simple as, you know, just a little, maybe that nudge comes with a little card on the windshield of those frequent offenders. The real solution really does start right here. It starts with you. I'm pretty sure that you would see an immediate improvement in terms of some of those parking challenges if everybody played nice together and made those most convenient spaces available for your clients and customers. Got you put this one in here, Randy. I like that one too. So, especially for businesses here, and I see a lot of business people here, we've only scratched the surface. If you're intrigued, if you want a little bit more, there's upwards of 100, maybe more ideas that we've put together at reopenmainstreet.com. And if this sounds like a bad infomercial right now, know that we're not making any money on this and we're not selling anything, all right? It was just our effort to try to help a lot of the clients, the friends that we've made over the years, including our new friends here in Opelika. So we've put it together and targeted both for you, for businesses, but also knowing that many of you wear different hats. We also broke it out and we provided some direction for community leaders and organizations as well. So like I say, up to 100 different ideas there. The best way to see some of the examples that we're sharing from communities across the country that are applying creative and ingenious, in some cases ingenious ideas, is if you're so inclined, follow us on one of those social media sites. You can give us a like if you'd like. Second area, promoting opportunities. And it, you know, back in March, April, when we first started sharing some of this information, we were talking about opportunities, and some people were looking at us like we were cross-eyed. How can we be talking about opportunities right now? But the fact of the matter is, some of the very best opportunities are presenting themselves right now, today. And we're convinced that this pool of entrepreneurs is going to be larger than we've seen in more than 10 years, and for a lot of different reasons. Some folks have been laid off, don't know what their prospects look like for going back. Some have had hours cut. Some have just been kind of liking this idea of working from home and the independence that brings, and are thinking about creating their own job. So you are building a history as a place for entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. And I love this. I don't know whose idea this was to do these signs. Very simple yet. I mean, I think I have 3 shots here. I must have seen 8, 10 of these signs out there. Businesses coming. I mean, you're making a real statement. And was music to our ears is as we had a chance to talk with a number of folks that have made recent investments and that have opened businesses and ask them, so is Opelika and downtown Opelika, is it business friendly? And I mean, to the person, nothing but praise, nothing but good things to say about that process. And it's not just happening here. We're seeing this. This is a phenomenon that we're seeing across the state, where even during COVID, we're seeing entrepreneurs take the opportunity to make the plunge. Even high school senior Maddie in Huntsville, and this is Nidra from Calera. We had a chance to spend good part of the day with Nidra in Calera just a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. I wish I had more time to tell you the story, but really inspiring. So as you think about how we tap into that pool and knowing that we have this track record that we're in place as being that place for entrepreneurs, just think about how you might continue to strengthen or even fine-tune your entrepreneurial support system. For example, training, mentoring, contests. I'm going to share with you the startup program from Franklin, Virginia, not Tennessee, Franklin, Virginia. Never knew there was one. And another example from Wheeling, West Virginia. And this one I really like because it really does engage you and other community members in the process to the extent where these folks, they go through a couple, 3 sessions together with some basic training, and they develop their pitch. And then you all get invited to come and hear that pitch. You might throw a few dollars in the hat, and that gets matched by a sponsor. And then at the end, you all get to vote on who gets the money. And it's not just for new businesses, it's for existing businesses as well. And for example, Attention to Detail, a detailing shop in the downtown area, was looking at adding some equipment and perhaps adding another bay, and took home $5,200 as a result. So what a great way to really involve the community and give you a say in some of those new and expanding businesses in the district. Also be thinking about spaces, and sure, there are existing spaces out there. And again, you're kind of setting the tone. You have some good precedents already in place. Love what y'all are doing at Collaboration Station. And who would have guessed that there's upwards of, 15, 20 or more different entrepreneurs and businesses there. But think creatively too. This comes from St. John's in Newfoundland, Canada. And so it's a garage, right? But all of a sudden the garage becomes this wonderful festival marketplace. And yeah, I didn't necessarily see this building in downtown Opelika, but I saw some kind of like it. So as you begin to think about creative ways of using this space, as well as space that could be added, this is the Boardwalk project in Batavia, Illinois. And they're just these cute little cottages that are all about a couple, 300 square feet, but they are going to be home to this new generation of entrepreneurs. And the cool thing is they can be moved too. So if they might land on a redevelopment site that's just sitting idle for the time being, well, maybe that's where they spend time now, and when that site's ready to be redeveloped, or as we want to change traffic patterns, we pick it up and we move the boardwalk someplace else. Also, I haven't even had a chance to dig into this fully yet. Mary shared this with me, but there's this brand new resource out there. You see the URL up at the top. Anyone interested in sponsoring, hosting a pop-up shop, or perhaps even creating a pop-up shop? There's this toolkit. From what I see, it's all free, so you might want to take a look there. And then finally, as we wrap up with this idea of promoting opportunities, do keep in mind that we need to help entrepreneurs and prospects, and this is where we're planting seed for that future recruitment, perhaps, that could happen here. Make sure that you're doing everything you can to help folks navigate that process. And you've got a great start on that. I've seen some great pieces out there. That can happen both in hard copy. It should be happening online as well. And certainly this is where all of the different partners need to come together and really kind of talk through the different roles that are part of that process here. Doing those things are truly going to help position you for expansion and someday recruitment success as well. And as Mary mentioned earlier, we're hoping that we'll have a chance to work with you. We've had a chance to work with a number of different communities. I think it was Lisa in one of our sessions that mentioned it's probably time that we start to take a look at the types of businesses, whether they be new or expanding, that would help fill some of these gaps or help round out and be complementary to the mix that exists in downtown Opelika. And finally, investment. Back when, you can see I actually pulled this from the website. It says there will be investors looking to capitalize. This needs to be updated because we know there are investors right now looking to capitalize. And I have to believe there are investors looking to capitalize in downtown Opelika. So great piece that just came out hot off the press, right? Like as of
Picked it up
yesterday?
Tuesday.
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 The new downtown investment guide, very nicely done. As an extension of that, I'm going to point you to some of the information that they compiled in Anniston. This idea of getting started, again, providing every cue, every opportunity to help folks navigate that process, as well as some of the things that they've done in Decatur. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to share some additional, in the report itself, I'm going to share some additional information with you about Decatur and some of the tools that they're using to help catalyze investment there. Part of that has to be the housing piece. I don't know how many times that's come up in the time that we've been here, and even in the survey it showed up again. All I want to suggest is, as you think about housing, think about the full range of housing that can cater to different lifestyles, different incomes. Some of it can be, and as a matter of fact, I did want to point this one out because I mentioned to someone I was familiar with, this is from Waterloo, Iowa. And you think this is an upper level loft, but it's actually in a warehouse space at ground level, and it's a story and a half loft unit at ground level. And you actually could have some opportunities to do that here. But again, think about the full range, the different styles of housing that could be available. There are just all kinds of good reasons to do housing. Anyone want to guess where this is from? It's one of your fellow Main Street, Alabama communities. Never going to guess. It's Headland, Alabama. Population 2, 3. It's a pretty small place. Anyone want to guess where this one is from? It's another fellow Main Street, Alabama community. It's from Marion, Alabama. Yeah. The cool thing about those, these are both at the back of storefronts. So they're ground level, but at the back of storefronts. So again, think creatively, think about all the different ways. Yes, there could even be some redevelopment opportunities to introduce some different styles of housing at the perimeter, on the periphery of the district as well. Finally, pursue every avenue to work together to help fill some of the gaps I shown that I have a question for you. How much money does it take to do a $1 million project? It's a trick question. And you know what? I'm almost embarrassed to share. I know people in this room that do this in their cat in their sleep. But I'm just giving you very simple kind of examples for redevelopment scenario. So this would be for an existing property that qualifies for the federal tax credits, right? So we're just again simple numbers using an acquisition cost of about $1 million, $100,000. A rehab cost of $1 million, so we have a project of $1.1 million. If we use both the federal and state tax credits, and then we sell them at 90 cents and 80 cents on the dollar, respectively, that can generate $340,000 in immediate equity. So then when you take that one step further, you look at that $1.1 million project cost, a loan of 60%, that equity required of 40%, well, again, you have $340,000 coming from the historic tax credits. And so now the equity from the developer owner becomes $100,000 to get in. Shaking your heads. You think this is funny math, right? It's actually true. So now think about this though. And so if it's a $5 million project, just take those numbers times 5. And we've only used in this example application of the federal and state historic tax credits. There certainly could be other available resources and incentives out there to tap. But think about this. All of a sudden, our $1 million project might be done by 5 investors with $20,000. So we're just planting the seed because, yeah, we're blessed here. We have some of the buildings that we've been in, I mean, some of the developers that we have here, it's world-class stuff. It's top-notch. But we've also heard that there might be others interested in getting in that game as well. And as I mentioned earlier, even in this time, right now that we're in, there are investors looking to invest, and there's something more appealing to making those investments right here at home as opposed to sending it to Wall Street or someplace else. So kind of exciting where you think, when you think where that could go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Randy. Oh, I'm sorry. I got way ahead of myself. As I mentioned, sorry. That was the simplest of simple scenarios. The other thing I want to mention is that there is no simple redevelopment project. There is no simple development project. I know that. But what it does help to do too is illustrate that as we think about this capital stack that it might take to do some of the more complex projects, the more difficult and challenging projects, there certainly are ways to generate those needed funds. And the area that we're going to ask you and challenge you to focus on is over here on the right, this other, that can include everything from gifts to grants to asset sharing to tax waivers and tax credits. This is where the public and the private sectors can come together to make some of these difficult projects work to help fill those gaps. And we really believe that those resources are here. The willingness of the partners to work together toward this end is here, and we're pretty excited about where that could lead. So, with that, thank you.
Thanks so much, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Randy Wilson with Community Design Solutions out of Columbia, South Carolina, where I have the privilege of serving as the consulting architect to Main Street, South Carolina. I've obviously taken the last 3 days and just been looking at Opelika through the lens of design and planning, and this is my form of a trick question. What's wrong with this picture? Don't answer out loud because you would accidentally embarrass yourself, okay? Or what's wrong with this picture? Or what's wrong with this picture? And it's a trick question because there's nothing wrong with those pictures. Now, if we wanted to take a fine-tooth comb and pick apart little bitty details, we could. But overall, one of the resounding things that you told us, and one of the resounding things that we observed, this is a great place. Is that right? I mean, if we were in church, would you be willing to say amen? Okay. You know, and so the thing that you are able to do in Opelika, and the predominant message as I conclude today's presentation about design-related issues is this. You're in this very enviable position of we simply need to take you from good to great. Now with that, there's some good news and there's not so much some bad news as much as some sobering news. The good news is this. As I travel the country, well not recently, but typically, and do work in hundreds of communities across the country, you're in an enviable position because typically people are struggling to even achieve good and you've arrived there. The sobering bad news is to go from good to great though requires quite a bit of effort because the kinds of issues that you're dealing with here in Opelika, the good news is they're rather sophisticated and they're difficult, but they can be done. As a matter of fact, there's plenty of demonstration right now in your city of people who are doing the good and the hard things. And so with that sort of in mind, I'm going to offer 3 suggestions, perhaps if you want to think about them, 3 recommendations that you can do from a design and planning perspective that I believe can move Opelika from good towards great. And the first is this, is to develop a common vision. To develop a common vision, specifically through a detailed, or frankly in your case, an updated downtown master plan. Now, as we sat around the last few days and we talked with Matt and Scott and other city officials, we talked to private property owners, we realized you have already done a great deal of very strategic and quality planning. Whether it's from the Creekline Parkway to the First Avenue streetscape to what's in store for the Breezeway. And particularly I want to draw your attention to the prior Opelika downtown plan that was done back in 2009, 2010 by Goodwin Mills and Kaywood in conjunction with Placemakers. I read that sucker from cover to cover this morning. I'm telling you, it's a very good plan. The only thing that's required is it just needs to be updated to reflect current market realities and current development situations here in Opelika. But we also have all those other plans, and what we need to do, to quote the wisest man in the world, is without vision the people perish, or without vision the people are restrained, is we need to restrain all of the potential directions that Opelika can move into a common direction, purposeful direction. You know, when I read this proverb out of Proverbs 29:18, the implication I see, my best analogy is a river. You know, as long as the banks of river restrain the water, it becomes a powerful force for good, to move goods, to bring life to vegetation and animal life. You remove the banks and all of a sudden it becomes a dangerous thing that floods. And what's going on in Opelika right now is like so many people are doing so many good things, but if you, in some ways, are going in many different directions. And so the power is diluted, whereas if we could restrain all of the potential directions to a vision that we all agree on, I promise you the multiplication of your efforts is gonna expand exponentially. Now, as you establish this vision, one of my key admonitions is that it becomes highly visual. You know, I'll read a report if I have to, but wouldn't you rather look at pictures, right? There's just something that's magical that occurs when you see it. You know, if I heard it once, I heard it a dozen times. We love this place. We don't just like Opelika, we love Opelika. And sometimes passion is evoked through imagery. I love what Aristotle says. The soul never thinks or dreams without a picture in mind. You know, I married way over my head. I married this beautiful doctor, okay, from a good Southern belle from Mississippi. My precious wife does not understand my terminology. You might not either. I can throw words like density and form, and you're like, what? But if I show you a picture, all of a sudden you get it. And I think a lot of people are like that. Perhaps there's people in the room that way. We evoke passion for a place, and we evoke commitment to sacrifice when we can see it. And so just make sure as this plan is formulated, it's highly visual, whether it's three-dimensional models, it's sketches, it's whatever it takes to communicate the message, because never forget, yes, part of the obvious purpose of a master plan is say what you should do, but I would humbly submit to you perhaps one of the more important purposes of a master plan is to say what to say no to. If I had $1 for every time a community in a short-sighted fashion said yes to a development opportunity, but they put the wrong building in the wrong use in the wrong location, and they've tripped themselves up for the next generation. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I see your city planner back there. He knows this by heart, you know. And so it's just important to create these structures. And there's a lot of other reasons, and this is one of the primary ones, is if you want to inspire consumer and investor confidence to actually take advantage of some of these great investment opportunities you have in the downtown, they have to have confidence that the public sector and the private sector are working hand in hand towards a purposeful direction. And that's when people will put the money on the table. But they aren't going to take that first step of risk unless they know what your plans are and they want to see them. And if I heard it once, I heard it a bunch of times from the board yesterday. I know Barbara said it, I know Aaron said it. It's like, we want plans that give us a specific roadmap of what to do. Who else gets tired of plans that never come to fruition, right? Nobody likes that. And so we have to break it down into these manageable chunks to ensure the job gets done. Too much is at stake. And when at the end of the day, this was a poster that we created after we created the downtown master plan for Starkville, Mississippi. And we decided to share it. We weren't going to hold on to this thing. This wasn't a plan just for the city. It wasn't a plan just for Main Street. It just wasn't a plan for just a few developers. This was everybody's plan because downtown belongs to everybody, right? This is your downtown. And so we put these posters in every storefront that would let us. And every time we applied for a grant to implement a project, we folded that sucker up and we sent it out. And that way, the grant funders, they're more inclined to fund your ask because they know that ask is not a one out, but it's a part of a process towards an intended, intentional future. The second recommendation I'd make to move you from good to great is start addressing some of the critical issues that are facing your private sector, in other words, your privately owned property buildings, as well as the public sector. That is the streetscapes and your parks and your open spaces. You know, first of all, kudos to the city and the Main Street program for an absolute stellar facade program that you already have in place. You know, the only thing we're going to weigh in with is some suggestions perhaps to enhance it and make it better. You know, whether it's something subtle, like maybe considering some reallocation of funds and different sources to make the process a little easier and user-friendly, but more importantly, in addition to just external things, maybe we want to do some things that would be a specific response, not just to COVID, but a response to kind of how retail and the market is trending these days. The trend anymore is towards micro retail. Do you understand? More people are wanting smaller spaces than larger spaces. And it's kind of a rub. Our historic downtown buildings, what, they're very narrow and they're very deep, right? And it's hard to try to rent 2,500, 3,000 square feet of overhead when all you need is 300 for that vintage clothing store, for that boutique, popcorn place. And so one of the recommendations is perhaps to offer a grant for demising walls. You all have the same dynamic that occurs in a lot of courthouse towns. What I mean by that is necessarily because you have a courthouse, the kinds of uses that often populate that are your legal professionals. And again, we want those professionals downtown because they bring jobs, they fill our restaurants, but they don't necessarily animate the street life. And so the beautiful thing of this approach is you just construct a wall a certain distance inside, you carve out the front for a micro retail space, the professional office remains in place and behind. They don't have to change address because, who goes shopping for a lawyer, right? If you're going, you don't need to browse for a lawyer. You know where you're going before you leave the house. They don't need that storefront, frontage. They just need an address, and you're going to go to them. This is an example from Paris, Arkansas. The building on the far right with the black awning was a Christmas decoration shop. And she put all of her storage in the building right here. And we appealed to her and said, would you be willing to carve out the front 15 feet and we could subdivide it for a coffee shop and a yogurt shop, and her storage remains behind. But now all of a sudden the sidewalk is animated and activated by these two micro retail spaces, and everybody wins. When it comes to some of your public spaces, I heard about some impending improvements to your breezeway. Great space. I was drawn to it immediately. The tour left me and I was in there photographing the mess out of the place. Now, I want to be very polite and diplomatic. This is good, but it can be great, right? And so thankfully I've had experience with a very similar place in a town called Lake City, South Carolina, where I serve as their project architect. And we had a very similar breezeway that moved from Main Street to a parking resource, but it had all these hardscape materials. And so in our redesign, we allowed it to breathe. And we introduced a lot more vegetation along with the hard surfaces, and then we made sure that the furnishings were movable, because not everybody wants to sit on a rigid bench. Sometimes you're with a group of 2, sometimes with a group of 6, sometimes you want to sit in the sun, sometimes you want to sit in the shade. And so give people those options. And for the record, I know you know this, but I'm going to say it for fun. If you give me a choice between a bench and a rocking chair, I'm going to pick a rocking chair every time. If you give me the choice between a bench and a swing, I'm going to pick a swing every time, right? Come on, we're in church, say amen. All right. So in other words, don't just go default to what you normally do. Don't just buy that stock bench when you can buy something fun. Get a colorful chair you can move, sit in a rocking chair, sit in a swing, and Ken, I'm going to provide you with specifications for all the furnishings you see in there. And the good news is they're not that expensive, okay?
Amen
So,
to that.
amen. There you go. All right. Now we're in church. Okay. The First Avenue streetscape. All right, Richard, my heart goes out to you, and this is for you, but also everybody who's over there, occupying First Avenue. I feel your pain. I know what this streetscape feels like and looks like because I have worked on one. And so we're back in that same town of Lake City, and this is what our streetscape looked like about 5 years ago. Now, what I'm about to show you is a focus on the buildings, because we haven't done our desired streetscape yet. So we first focus on the buildings, and it's pretty significant transformation. But we're not finished yet because we want to see the streetscape reflect the kinds of activities that exist in these buildings, where it's a very, very organic thing and a lot of in and out. And so I respect the fact that you've already got plans, and there's probably some limitations from some powers that be. So please take this with a grain of salt. But our desire here is to eventually go to what's called a shared or a curbless street, where the street and its texture goes from face of building to face of building. If you've ever been in Europe, this is everywhere, and it works wonderfully. You have this interplay of plant material. The stores spill out into the roadway. It's shared by cars and bicyclists and not motorists, pedestrians. And guess what happens? Because I know when you drive a rented car in Spain and you're trying to weave through human beings, you drive rather slow. Now, all of a sudden, it's very safe, but it works. It works magically. And the interplay just makes it a very, very dynamic street, and you're allowed to do things that you couldn't otherwise. Now, if you have limitations, do what we did, and I think you've already done it, is have the city by the street, and then you have a great deal more latitude about what you can do. and now back to Spain. And if you want even more latitude, get an investor group and buy the street. I had to tell people, this is not a rendering. This is a real live photograph. And they put these shade sails, it's a hard word to say, over the entire roadway. It was wonderful. It turned the space into an outdoor room. And when I was over there, that's what it felt like to me. The magic of that particular streetscape, it's of a certain scale that it's just kind of the right proportion to make it feel like an outdoor room. It shouldn't feel like a roadway. It should feel like an outdoor room and an extension of the businesses that face it on both sides. You have got this jewel in your downtown. Trust me, I promise you, the town that I work in, Lake City, we get about 47 trains a day. So I don't want to hear any lip from y'all about your 5, okay? But I understand, I respect the fact that when it comes through, it's always inconvenient, right? It's always when you need to cross the tracks. But it is true that sometimes it feels like a barrier, right? Sometimes it kind of feels like there's two sides of the tracks, and how can we unify that? How can we view that as an asset and not a detriment? I would strongly, build upon something Trisha said about your arts and your desire to have a presence of the arts. I would start beginning to think about and begin treating that green swath as a linear park that utilizes public art as the breadcrumbs to draw people to and through your downtown. I don't know who did it, but I love them. I am pretty confident, because I've had to deal with CSX Railroad in the past. It is not a fun experience. That those trees are probably in the railroad's right away, but I'm not going to tell them if you don't tell them, okay? So I don't know if they got there by permission or just asking forgiveness, but you have a precedent for putting stuff there. And so if you've put stuff there, put more stuff there. I would love to see this meandering sidewalk, especially. Would you not walk right there? I'd walk right there every day of the week and on Sunday. I mean, this, by the way, that's your town. That's in between those magnolias and those crepe myrtles. But I love what White River State Park in downtown Indianapolis did. They had to cross this major bridge. They turned it to a pedestrian bridge, and they used these public art installations. You'd get to one and you could barely see the next. And you get to the next one, you could barely see the next one. And before you know it, you've crossed this quarter-mile bridge. It's just this beautiful sort of breadcrumb. It just lures you to the next installation. I mean, the Opelika is a sophisticated enough place that you deserve that level of presence of public art in your public realm. The presence of public art is one of the absolute strongest indicators on every quality of life index I know. And it's also just proves to be good for the pocketbook. So that would be another recommendation going forward. Given this site and its proximity to the brew pubs and the breweries, this thing's begging to be a beer garden, okay? And I've heard rumors of something like that, and you've got it from this part-time pastor. That's a strong amen. Do it, do it, do it, okay? And I just want to show you a common similar example from South Carolina. This is called Spartanburg. We had a building that you can see burned down, unfortunately, and so we installed what's called the freight yard. In the back is a public miniature putt-putt along with free. In other words, there's a children's area and then there's an adult drinking age area. You got cornhole, and you can see they've got the Jumbotron. They project movies up on the wall. And then all the materials are super, super affordable. You got pea gravel, picnic tables, containers, just a level on top. And while it looks kind of cool in the day, the magic happens at night. When it really becomes this place, it just becomes this gathering. And you need that kind of hub on that side of the tracks to balance everything you've got on the other side of South Railroad at the moment. Last but not least, and I want to compliment you, great job for the park that you've already done. Whether it's at Nippers, and I apologize, I don't know all the names. I think it's Mafia's, okay. And what's the other one? Irish Bread Pub, where we were last night. Great job, and I want to commend Matt and the people in the city who've just made it easy to apply for and install those. I just want to say excel still more and do even more, because parklets and pellets, they infuse the downtown with this activity and color and animation. But now in COVID, they play this strategic role of temporarily providing additional seating for our restaurants who are in desperate need for that in light of social distancing requirements. To Ken, and Matt, if you want him to, I'm going to provide to him some resources because I respect the city that, you know, they probably don't want one of these in front of every store, and so these are viewed as temporary measures. I'm going to give you that from San Marcos, and then if you have any questions about design of these parklets, this resource from UCLA in our world is the Bible when it comes to parklets, and hopefully it'll help you. Last but not least, I want to end with my most important and my most impassioned plea. While I'm a big fan of the master plan, while I'm a big fan of those addressing the sites I just addressed, this is probably the come to Jesus moment, okay? And it's this right here. Going forward, view downtown as the next major development in Opelika. This is what I mean by that. You guys are blessed. You have got a very robust industrial base here in Opelika. You also have these extremely profitable economic development engines that reside outside of downtown. To this, I would bet all the money in the world that the powers that be had really strategic meetings, had very thoughtful conversations, offered very strategic incentives to lure those businesses to your community. And all I want is to make sure that same attention to detail, that same commitment to the art of the deal, and those same sorts of incentives are offered to the downtown. That's where you were supposed to say amen. Okay?
Amen.
And here's why. Philosophically, downtown is the heart and the soul of your community. Downtown Opelika, Alabama, exists on only one place on the planet, and it's right here. You know, with all due respect to Tigertown, there's nothing at Tigertown that I can't get in Columbia, South Carolina. But there is nothing in your downtown that exists in Columbia, South Carolina. The assemblage of historic structures that you have right here exist in only one place, and so therefore we must preserve, maintain, enhance, and build upon that heritage. Number two, it's just good fiscal stewardship and financial sense. All of the infrastructure that's needed for the development the downtown needs already exists. You do not have to run another sewer line. And last but not least, I love the way you put it, be kind. Be kind to your neighbors. The dollar that gets spent downtown in one of your locally owned business recirculates at least 6 times in the community before it leaves. The dollar that's spent out in Tigertown probably leaves that moment. And so it's just being a good citizen to the people of Opelika. 3 things to accomplish making this the next big development. Jay's already alluded to this. All I need to say is this. Ensure that the process for opening businesses and doing development in the downtown is streamlined and it's business friendly. Number 2, if we're going to think about strategic incentives to lure industry or new greenfield development, let's think about strategic incentives for development in the downtown area. I don't know all you need, but I don't have to wait on a market study from Jay to tell you you need housing, you need housing, you need housing, and you need housing.
Amen.
Okay, you might even need a grocery store, but I know for sure you need housing. Because there's 2 ways for me to build your business. I can either get them to you easily, or I can put them in your backyard. And if you put people in your backyard, like I love the way you described it, Mary, walking distance to Griff's, walking distance to Niffers, walking distance, then all of a sudden you have a far more sustainable market base than relying on people from the outside coming to you. And the last thing I want to say is erect safeguards to make sure, you know, this is housing. This is a mixed-use housing in Aiken, South Carolina. It's stunningly gorgeous. It fits like a glove. You would never know it's a new construction. Imagine how that developer would feel if that development was allowed near it. And so that's why we have to erect safeguards to safeguard the investment that people are willing to make in your downtown area. And that's why we appeal to the Spice Girls, who say, if you want to be my lover, you gotta abolish parking minimums and exclusionary single-family zoning, okay? You didn't know that the Spice Girls were the bastion of all wisdom pertaining to urban planning. So there's certain urban planning topics and issues that must be addressed that are unique to downtown. The old kind of parking requirements in our codes developed in the 40s and 50s kill the kind of mixed-use development that we need in our downtowns. And we don't need just one building isolated. We need to create a level of density To do that, I would strongly encourage that you move towards form-based codes to address the new infill development. The firm that I mentioned before from Birmingham, Placemakers, they did the form-based codes for Starkville, Mississippi after our master plan, did an outstanding job. I want to commend those guys as well as Goodwin, Mills, and Haywood, did I get it right? I would talk to those guys about updating your plan. Since they did the prior work, they could probably do it for a lot less money than normal. And I want to go back because I would be remiss if I didn't say this related to housing. You know, what Richards is doing over there in Southside, that stuff is off the charts good. When I saw it, I stopped the truck and I photographed the mess out of it because I'm advocating for that kind of housing everywhere. Yesterday, one of the board members, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he said, what kind of housing should we have downtown? Should we have mixed use? Should we have loft apartments? Or should we have that sort of what I call pocket neighborhood, single family, but clustered in a lot more dense arrangement? And the answer was yes, 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 and yes, and yes, and yes. We need all of those types because we need various price points to meet the changing and the different needs of your community. But the beauty of form-based codes, and trust me, we are not going to hit all those bullets. The short version is this. They tell you what you want. They don't prescribe what you can't do. And to Jay's point about incremental development, because they make the process easier, what we find is a lot more smaller independent development curves rather than just one or two major developers doing all of the work. And therefore you introduce a lot more diversity, but you guarantee the form is appropriate to your place. And streamlined development, you ask any developer in the room, what's their favorite incentive? It's a business-friendly climate that makes the process smooth and fast. That's money in their pocket. Time is money. For that architect that resides, and Lisa and I had a great conversation about this yesterday, I would just strongly encourage that you just massage your design guidelines to be far more illustrative and can-do in nature. Tell a property owner the dozens, if not hundreds of things they can do with the balconies or their paint schemes or their, what I'm looking at right here, their storefronts or windows or doors that would be appropriate. Change the conversation. You know, these kinds of regulations are good for the pocketbook because they safeguard everybody's investment. I can put a dozen studies on your desk tomorrow. Places that have quality guidelines along with the review board, those properties appreciate at a rate between 16 and 26% higher than those communities that don't. And the reason is quite simple. It's because now I know my neighbor can't do any harm to my investment. I'm really confident that if you take those three things to heart and you apply them, I am supremely confident that Opelika is going to move from good to great. Now I'll let Mary wrap up.
Thank you. Just real quickly, guys, it's going to be about 6 weeks. As you can see, we do a lot of work in 3 days. But what we touched upon tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. So you will receive a written report with pictures, we promise. In roughly 6 weeks is usually the time frame we try to get everybody's stuff in. At that point, what I would like to do is come back. As much as you think these guys travel with me all the time, they don't. You get me, but I'll be nice to you. We'll come back and I will help present this to you, to the city, to whoever wants to be involved in the process. We really need to make sure that we get as many people involved in understanding, believing, and moving this process forward. So that's going to be the next step. You'll see us. Actually, this is being recorded. That'll be the next step. This is being recorded. Randy does always a fabulous job of getting this out for us. You'll get this spool to you probably tomorrow.
Sometime tomorrow. It'll be uploaded as a YouTube video.
Yeah, so you can share it. So you'll see the PowerPoint, you hear our voices. So you'll be getting that so you can start to share the word in between the time frame that takes us to get a lot more meat on the bones of what we talked about tonight. So thank you guys so much for your time. We're going to turn this off now.